The big update is here. The update that finally brings console and PC to parity in terms of content. Halo 4 has arrived, and beyond just Halo 4, the arrival of long-promised graphics settings, frame rate options, and the activation of crossplay for multiplayer, breaking down the barriers between console and PC users. This was a pretty big content drop for the MCC that everyone benefits from, whether it's new content in the Forge mode or new skins to chase in multiplayer. The MCC got a lot bigger, and I'd love to cover the new update with you all. Something about these port reports that I probably should have done when I started them was reaching out to those with different hardware specifications, and not just the console space, but the PC space. This video will be based on my own experience with my own set of hardware. If you're having a different experience, I actually encourage you to let me know in the comments, and better yet, report them to Halo Support's website. It helps the developers actually organize and actively track bugs. If a bug is ruining your play experience, the best way to get the devs' attention is folks all reporting the same issue with evidence on how it's behaving on their systems. The publishing team is small, and working from home during a pandemic to port these games and systems to not just hundreds of PC configurations, but now next-gen consoles too, is a bit hard. It would help them keep track of what the biggest issues in the MCC are, and yeah, I encourage you guys to do it. And with that all being said, if you find yourself enjoying the video, a like is appreciated, and let's begin. Halo 4 is a beautiful game with an attention to detail in its art that sometimes surpasses its own next-gen sequel. While using a heavily evolved version of Halo Reach's game engine, in just 2 years of development, the amount of detail that 343 squeezed out of the Xbox 360 console in 2012 was just breathtaking. The game also makes pretty liberal use of lens flares and bloom effects, which not everyone is a fan of and certainly is overdone a bit, but I find that it adds a lot of production value to the scenery and makes each environment in the campaign feel like living, breathing concept art. It's pretty haunting just how well this game translated from its concept art to an actual playable space. And Halo 4 may not be my favorite Halo game aesthetically, and definitely it can stray pretty far from the Halo look at points, but when isolated from the Halo brand, the art direction for this science fiction universe is quite strong. It's a real crime that 343 removed theater mode support from the campaign, because these environments could have been a real joy to explore with a free cam. These achievements, of course, came at some pretty noticeable costs, and unfortunately, Halo 4 is a game that, while being pretty, isn't as visually consistent as previous entries in the Halo series. For every incredibly detailed high-poly model, there are some really rough stuff in the textures and materials. Probably the biggest hit that Halo 4 takes is in the explosions and debris/particles, which unfortunately don't hold up as well as Halo 3. The cutbacks also unfortunately extend to the levels and environments that you actually fight in. You'll rarely see vehicle sequences or sandboxy situations on the same scale as Halo 3, and the AI noticeably seem less responsive and expressive during these larger arenas. In my time on the MCC, I found some strange oddities. Some of these visual issues are actually legacy problems in the MCC version of Halo 4 that weren't fixed, but also some of these are newly introduced problems during the porting process. Given that the small publishing team is not only working from home, but also porting non-native engines to a multitude of PC configurations, on top of a new generation of console hardware, and getting the crossplay working, some of these bugs are understandable. And it's not nearly as bad as the Halo 2 port, thankfully, and minus the weird issues, The presentation is mostly preserved and actually sometimes enhanced thanks to the work done, with the much appreciated inclusion of graphics options. Performance should be something that people can optimize their visuals around. I've found that really the biggest area of problem in Halo 4 is the big team battle mode. And with a little bit of fiddling in the level of detail, I've been able to smoothen out my performance. Halo 4 is a game of many visual accomplishments, but with a lot of noticeable graphical compromises to achieve these. But seeing these compromises in service of some genuinely beautiful game artwork is really cool, and the publishing team did a wonderful job bringing it to the PC. Halo 4 was the first FPS Halo game to not actually be done by Bungie. It was done by 343 Industries, and Halo 4's audio director, Sotaro Tojima, a man behind many games such as Metal Gears 2, 3, and 4, wanted to up the production value of Halo's sonic soundscape. During the era of Bungie Halo, it was appropriate and even common for devs to use sound libraries and stock sound effects in games. And in fact, many of Bungie's most iconic sounds are stock sound effects that you can find online and use. The desire to remake many of Halo's sounds from scratch led to a Halo game with some really interesting sound work. The assault rifle of Halo 4 may be one of my favorite video game automatic weapons. And the soundtrack, while being a bit different sounding and not quite as iconic as the classics by Marty O'Donnell and Michael Salvatore, still manages to sync up and be used appropriately in the game. Stingers enhancing the reveal of impressive, even by today's standards, skyboxes.
There, Chief, a console in the back.
And some of the combat music, while being a bit mundane, definitely complements the engagements. Unfortunately, the game's audio, I think, suffers from a lot of over-processing, with the actual bodies of the sound effects being crushed and smeared. It can make the game sound very scratchy and screechy, which is a departure from the warm soundscape of the Bungie Halo games, which focused on discrete and independent transients in their sounds. What made sounds like the Scarab explosion or the Spartan laser so impactful in the Bungie Halos is that they were noticeably more aggressive than the rest of the game's audio spectrum. In Halo 4, however, everything sounds hyper-aggressive, and it can make Halo 4 a hard game for me to play for extended periods of time before my ears start ringing. The one sound in Halo 4 that I didn't actually mind this time around was the Warthog, and that's actually due to an audio issue with this port. And on the topic of audio issues, the port's audio is pretty good for the most part. Of course, there's a few issues here and there. Every now and then, the soundtrack or the background ambience can actually overwhelm character dialogue and gunshots, and you can kind of struggle to hear the game under all of the noise due to the weird mixing. It's not enough to be distracting, but there were moments where I knew something wasn't quite right with the mixing. The Spartan Ops cutscenes also seem to have strange audio issues, but thankfully the publishing team is aware, and when looking at the Halo support website, the list of issues was updated on Halo 4. Halo 4's sound design is something that's hard for me to praise since it's a very noisy and screechy game, but the porting team did solid work here. I'll update in the comments though if there's any serious issues discovered. With the arrival of the Halo 4 themed update, a whole host of new features, options, and content were added. Alongside Halo 4's campaign, Spartan Ops, and multiplayer was the Halo 4 Forge mode, and a whole host of improvements for it. Halo 4's Forge now includes previously campaign-exclusive objects and various other stuff, a dramatic and appreciated boost to this iteration of Forge, and hopefully the thing that will get people to begin using it alongside Halo Reaches. The publishing team also finally delivered the promise of true, proper graphics and framerate options, and it's actually on a per-game basis, so you can tune and tweak each game to your preferred liking. The MCC now has proper animation interpolation for frame rates above 60 frames per second, which looks just beautiful in Halo Reach. Since each game in the MCC is designed differently, certain games understandably have less options than others, but there are things like particle effects tweaking, level of detail for foliage, shadow casting, and the like. Weirdly enough, a few of the options do seem bugged. Blood options seem to just ignore my preferences and display blood decals regardless of my settings, and Halo 3's shadow quality seems to only go up to normal with no options for enhanced despite ODST having this option. I also unfortunately noticed further dips in framerate in Combat Evolved Anniversary. The anniversary modes for Halo 1 and 2 have been struggling in the framerate department for years now, but after this update my performance has gotten a bit worse. And big offenders like the Silent Cartographer now dip into the low 40s on my GTX 1080 Ti and 32GB of RAM. 343 does seem to be aware of these problems as they did update their known issues list on Halo support. The MCC is a large collection, and the porting process hasn't been a smooth one over this last year, but I'm hoping now that all the games are on PC and accounted for, some polishing can be done to clean up the bugs in the other ports that weren't native to the original games. A rather large and extremely positive inclusion in this update was the activation of crossplay for the Master Chief Collection's multiplayer, with campaign support coming a bit later once some issues are ironed out. Just like 2019's Modern Warfare, you have the ability to search for similar input devices, and once you're in-game, your input preferences are locked in. Crossplay is a feature I'm sure most will appreciate, and I can confirm that it's been very easy to find matches on PC now that crossplay is active. And as a content creator, community game nights can now be a very easy thing to organize. Another big inclusion was the Spartan Ops game mode from Halo 4. It's a ridiculously large collection of small combat situations in a variety of locations such as multiplayer maps, campaign locations, and the such. It began production during Halo 4's development as Firefight, but it was gradually turned into more of a narrative mission-based mode. Due to the amount of missions that the mode has to offer and the hurried development of it, it's definitely a rough package. Encounter design is all over the place, and the visuals and AI pathing aren't at the same quality as the campaign. At the time, it wasn't really appreciated as a replacement for Firefight, but here in the Master Chief Collection alongside Firefight, Spartan Ops is a rough but enjoyable experience with so much content that it could easily take quite a while for you and a few buddies to chew through. This is good, and I'm really happy I can play it here on PC. The publishing team also introduced a whole host of new skins for Halo 3 and 4 in the new seasonal progression system, alongside the ability to pick and choose which region you'd like to matchmake in for those who live outside of North America. All around, the user experience is just a win this season. Very good stuff. This season brought some excellent and appreciated additions to the MCC, alongside a completely new Halo game and one of my favorite big team battle experiences in the collection. It's not without its rough spots, and hopefully now that all the games are on PC and accounted for, the publishing team can look towards polishing and introducing new features such as the much anticipated custom games server browser and further mod support. The MCC has been a wild ride this year, and it's definitely seen its ups and downs, but seeing the collection slowly rebuilt and come together into this beautiful love letter to the series is something special. The publishing team had an impossible task, and though work still needs to be done, the MCC is in a great place now, and I look forward to the future of this project and what they'll deliver to us next. How has your experience been with the MCC? I'd love to hear your comments down below, and with that being said, I'll see you guys on the next video.